Welcome to Unexplained History, the podcast that dives into the tales that linger in the shadows. I'm Tom McKenzie. Picture this: a pickup truck cutting through the twilight on a desolate desert highway. Suddenly, a single sound pierces the stillness, forever altering a life. If you enjoy our journey, please follow, rate, and leave a quick review. It truly helps us connect with more curious minds. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at unexplained.co and keep your ears open for our upcoming audiobook on apocalyptic disasters, set to arrive in just a few months. Tonight, we follow two paths: the thriller of unexplained events that chill you to the bone, and the careful look at how we respect DNA traditions without twisting them. Let's step into that night with Jake, a truck driver who had his own frightening encounter on that same stretch years ago and is still searching for answers.
The two-lane highway runs like a black ribbon under fading dusk. Jake's pickup hums, tires whisper on asphalt, fence posts flick past, and shadows lengthen. Gravel ticks under the wheels. Then a thud hits the passenger window. Something runs in the road's gutter, matching the truck's speed. Jake looks over. A dark shape moves too fast for anything normal. He slams the brakes and pulls over. The engine idles. Silence stretches, broken only by distant coyote calls across the desert. Jake steps out with a flashlight. The beam cuts the night, but the shape is gone. Or maybe something stirs in the shadows. Years later, Jake still replays that sound, that thud. He calls it a figure, humanoid but wrong, moving with impossible speed. Not a coyote, not a person, something else. That encounter pulled him into a search for answers. Back in 1996, the Deseret News reported repeated high strangeness accounts at what came to be called Sherman or Skinwalker Ranch. Cattle deaths, strange lights, and voices. Official sources at the time offered limited corroboration, leaving many questions. These reports add context to stories like Jake's and suggest patterns in the area. Jake's fear isn't just a story, it has consequences. He avoids night drives now, always scanning the roadsides. Friends say he's changed, quieter, more watchful. That night shifted his world, making every shadow feel like a threat. Return to the desert night road. Dusk becomes full dark. Jake's truck sits alone. Gravel footsteps pace the car. Crunch, crunch, faster than they should. A fox calls somewhere, or an owl. The air feels thick, charged with something unseen. There is an ethical layer here. We must respect DNA ways. Some terms get misused in popular culture, twisted into labels that do not fit. We handle those claims with care, matching them against true cultural context. For Jake, the consequence lingers. He tells his story hoping for closure, but it opens more questions. His encounter ties into wider tales, yet we will not sensationalize. This is about the human cost, like Jake's long nights replaying that thud.
Jake's fear is the human ledger of what happens when legend collides with late-night reality. It shows how these stories leave marks and change lives. This is where it turns: the place, the time, and the rules that shape this tale. What did Jake actually see, and what do we call it? We left Jake on that dark highway, still haunted by what he saw. We promised to ground the story before going further. We're mapping the place, the time, and the ethical lines that matter, respecting boundaries that keep living cultures from becoming just another scary tale. What are we allowed to ask, and what must be left unrecorded? Geography, tribal rules, and the weight of certain words shape the limits here. Missteps can turn private grief and sacred practice into spectacle. We need to step carefully.
On the outskirts of a small desert town in northern Arizona, late evening, neon lights flicker from a roadside diner, throwing red and blue glows across a dusty parking lot. A sheriff's cruiser idles nearby, its engine humming low, like it's waiting for something to happen. This is the kind of place where highways stretch into vast, empty lands. Lands that belong to the Navajo Nation, or Diné Bikéyah, as it's known to the people who have called it home for centuries. The reservation covers parts of Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico, and is larger than some states. It's not empty space on a map, it's a living place with laws, communities, and deep-rooted traditions. Jake's encounter happened on a stretch of highway cutting through this area in the early 2000s, when cell phones were often flip models and GPS was still a novelty for most drivers. Official guidelines are clear. The Navajo Nation Parks and Recreation publish rules and permitting guidance for park sites. Some tribal parks and sacred locations restrict photography and emphasize visitor respect. Those rules say that if you're filming, researching, or even visiting certain spots, you need permission. It's not bureaucracy, it's protection for what is sacred. Without permits, stories like Jake's can get twisted. People show up with cameras, probing into private matters and turning real experiences into spectacle. For Jake, who has kept searching for answers for years, that fear becomes entangled with a wider web of respect and misunderstanding. Shift to a quiet courthouse in Window Rock, the Navajo Nation's capital. Echoes bounce off the walls as paper files rustle, old records of land disputes, perhaps even reports of strange happenings. Here jurisdiction matters. Tribal police handle incidents on reservation land, not outside sheriffs. That idling cruiser back at the diner might stop at the border, where federal and tribal lines meet. Terms like Yinab Lushi aren't casual labels. In Diné culture, the term refers to something serious and often taboo, linked to stories of harm or imbalance, not movie monsters. We avoid shorthand because it disrespects context. Views within the Diné community vary, and we honor that by not assuming or simplifying. Jake's frightening encounter left him shaken, avoiding that highway ever since. If we label it wrongly, we add to his isolation and make his search for understanding harder amid rumors and half-truths. Standing on a canyon rim at dusk, wind whips through the red rock while distant calls carry across the hollow. An owl hooting, a coyote yipping far off. This is the place's texture. Vast canyons, sparse vegetation, and a sky that feels endless. In the early 2000s, cell service was spotty here, adding to the isolation Jake felt that night. Tom sat down with a Navajo Nation permitting official, let's call her Miss Begay for privacy. She explained the mechanics. To film or inquire about cultural sites, you apply through parks and recreation. They review projects for respect. No disturbing sacred areas, no publishing taboo details. Our production followed this guidance. We declined to record certain stories out of respect for Diné direction, leaving some things unreported to avoid harm. Discussing certain practices in Diné contexts can invite trouble or disrespect ancestors. Guidance emphasizes visitor conduct, stick to paths, and no photos in restricted zones. For Jake, that boundary means his story walks a line. He can share his fear without crossing into protected territory, which could deepen his search for peace. One human moment. Jake once tried talking to locals about his encounter but hit walls of silence, taboos in action. It left him more alone, questioning whether answers exist. Years later, he drives extra miles to avoid that stretch, a real consequence of fear colliding with cultural boundaries.
So, we have grounded the map, the vast Navajo lands, the permitting rules that safeguard traditions, and why words like Yi-Nald-Lushi demand care, not as labels, but as parts of a living culture. For Jake, that means his highway terror isn't isolated. It's wrapped in ethical layers that could help or hinder his quest for closure. Now, the case files come into view. Courtroom mentions, ranger logs, dated encounters with real measurements. A question before we move on. When does a sighting become evidence, and who gets to decide? Those earlier ethical boundaries on Navajo land explain why some stories stay private. Specific incidents appear in public records, puzzle pieces that mix belief, law, and real-life drama. One court record from 2011 in the 10th Circuit refers to ashes used during a conflict. I'll read a stitched version of the non-sacred parts to keep this respectful.
It's pitch black on a lonely desert highway. Your tires sing a steady hum against the rough asphalt. The fence line whips by, wire resonating with a faint metallic twang in the wind. Then, out of nowhere, a dark shape appears, running parallel to your car. It keeps pace effortlessly just beyond the beam of your headlights. Your heart races. We freeze the scene here, before giving it a name. This kind of eerie moment is what our friend Jake, the truck driver, faced years ago on a similar stretch of road. He's still piecing together what it means, searching for answers that might explain his fear. Then the paper trail moves into a federal courtroom in 2011 in the 10th Circuit. The wood-paneled walls, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the shuffle of papers set a different kind of tension. This is a real appellate hearing, not a movie set. The record from that case mentions ashes in the context of a homicide-related conflict. It shows how belief can drive action. The court document is official. It comes from the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. In it, the reference is straightforward: ashes placed on property and animals as a ward against skinwalkers within a homicide-related conflict narrative. No more, no less. The implication is clear. Beliefs can lead to real consequences, like disputes escalating to tragedy. Another vivid spot is a government office in Window Rock, Arizona, around 2008. The room has that analog feel, stacks of newsprint reports, the click of an old tape recorder capturing meetings. Late one evening, staff reported hearing unexplained voices echoing through the halls. No one was there. Local journalism, including articles in the Navajo Times from that year, documented it as an odd occurrence. The office covers about 5,000 square feet, with incidents noted between 8 p.m. and midnight on multiple nights in October 2008. Reports describe the voices as muffled whispers, like static over a patrol radio mixed with wind through metal fence wire. Journalists quoted named sources, office workers who filed incident logs. This is documented reporting with official provenance from tribal records. The evidence is straightforward, dated articles and logs. These moments raise questions, but they remain reports of human experience, not proof of the supernatural. Jake's highway encounter happened around 2010 on a 50-mile stretch of Route 191. There is no claim of causation, only a note that similar reports dot the area over the years. The fence wire humming and the radio static in a patrol car are sensory details that recur in multiple accounts. We treat each report as distinct. The courtroom ashes and the Window Rock voices are anchors from 2011 and 2008, respectively, showing how ordinary places can hold extraordinary stories. Human impact runs deep. For someone like Jake, these incidents are not just tales, they fuel a personal quest. After his frightening drive, he changed routes, avoiding that stretch of highway. It cost him time and money on the job. Still, he pores over old news clips, hunting for parallels. Curiosity turns into a quiet obsession. Back on that highway, the shape runs alongside, asphalt blurring under tires. Jake said it lasted about 2 minutes, covering maybe a mile at 60 miles per hour. Reports like the window rock voices or the courtroom references don't explain the sighting. They place it in a timeline of noted events and add texture through local reporting. Ink on paper, factual and grounded. As this forensic look closes, keep in mind, these are concrete incidents with dates and sources. The 2011 appellate record and the 2008 window rock report stand as they are. They show how belief and life can intersect without moving into metaphysics. For Jake, they are threads in an ongoing search, reminders that some questions persist.
Court records capture belief-driven action. They don't validate metaphysics. That's the clean takeaway here. For Jake, the truck driver still searching for answers after his highway scare, these stories add weight to his experience and show real consequences, like how fear can change a person's path. From here, the incidents expand into larger narratives, from ranger lore to ranch reports and courtroom nods that feed a broader mythology. When a court records a belief-based action, does that make the belief true or simply consequential? The tension from those courtroom scenes and local files didn't go away. This is where the story escalates. Start with the 1995 claims from a Utah ranch. Watch how private funding and television amplified them into something massive. And notice the gap between the land itself and the wider cultural story. These remain disputed narratives, not settled truths. Now the paper trail starts moving.
Dusk on a 2-lane highway in the Utah desert. Tires hum against cracked asphalt. A fence line rushes by on your right, posts blurring into the fading light. You're alone in your truck, radio static crackling low. Then something catches your eye, movement parallel to the car, loping along the fence, matching your speed. It's big, shadowy, not quite animal, not quite anything you know. Your heart pounds. You grip the wheel tighter. But just before you name it, before fear gives it shape, we freeze the moment. That's the edge where stories start to build. Our friend Jake, the truck driver who had his own frightening encounter on a desert highway years ago, knows that edge all too well. He's still searching for answers, piecing together reports that echo his night. Back in 1995, things kicked off at a place called the Sherman Ranch in Uintah County, Utah. The family there reported strange happenings. Lights in the sky, odd animal behaviors, things that didn't add up. Livestock vanished or turned up hurt in ways that baffled them. These were local claims, shared quietly at first, like whispers over a corral fence creaking in the wind. Word spread. Journalists picked it up, writing articles that painted the ranch as a hotspot for the unexplained. Private funding followed. A businessman with an interest in the paranormal bought the property and poured money into investigations. Teams arrived with cameras and sensors, turning personal stories into data hunts. Reality television followed, amplifying every detail into episodes that gripped viewers. But here's a key point. Skinwalker Ranch in Uintah County, Utah, is geographically separate from the Navajo Nation. Its modern mythos has been amplified by private funding, reportage, and reality television, rather than being a direct Navajo cultural site. Night at the ranch, dust swirling under a vast sky, the low moan of wind through livestock corrals. Investigators huddle around equipment, waiting for signs. Reports escalated. Claims of portals, creatures, voices without sources. Media packaged it all, from books to documentaries, creating a brand that spread online. Memes popped up, turning ranch tales into viral horror. Yet this growth highlighted a mismatch. The ranch's stories did not align directly with DNA cultural geography, which centers far to the south in the Four Corners region. For Jake, this matters. His highway scare years ago left him rattled, questioning what he saw. A 1996 article in a local paper mentioned the Shermans' experiences. Then national outlets ran with it. The implication is clear. Local claims can become commodities sold through shows and books, profiting producers while original voices fade. Major disputed claims appear as contested narratives, not established facts. Some claim that a skinwalker is a species of non-human shape-shifting creature. Others argue that Skinwalker Ranch investigations demonstrate government interest and validation of paranormal claims. These ideas fuel the myth, but they are debated, with skeptics pointing to natural explanations or misinterpretations. Shift to an archival feel, the hush of a reel-to-reel tape spinning, pulling old interviews into the light. One ranch hand described seeing a large wolf-like figure that bullets couldn't touch, a claim that raced through media channels. Funding kept the investigations going, but it didn't prove anything definitive. The human side? For folks like Jake, these tales offer community, but also isolation when the hype overshadows personal pain. His search for answers gets buried under the sensational layers. Scene 3. A production set at dusk, cameras rolling on the highway near the ranch. Producers direct actors to recreate encounters, blending fact with drama. Evidence builds as viewership spikes and funding flows. Commercialization turns uncertainty into entertainment, but it can harm by blurring lines between real experiences and profit-driven spins. Jake feels this when online forums dismiss his story as just another meme, leaving him more alone in his quest. As stories aggregate, they connect dots that might not exist, from ranch fences to distant highways. Tension builds, pulling listeners deeper into the web.
So, we've traced how those 1995 ranch reports ballooned through media and money into a full-blown phenomenon, while also noting the geographic and cultural gaps. For someone like Jake, the truck driver still haunted by his desert highway encounter, that escalation can complicate the search for answers and make personal fears feel like just another product in the mix. Up next are the key figures: ranch owners, rangers, journalists, producers, whose choices shaped this debate. What happens when credibility and profit collide in the hunt for answers? Late on a desert highway, tires hum and headlights slice the dark. Then something runs beside your car, and the moment freezes. Last time, we traced how incidents turn into myths, money, media, and misplaced locations. Now the people behind the reports come into view. Retired Navajo Rangers Stan Milford Jr. and Jonathan Dover, and ranchers Terry and Gwen Sherman. Their words traveled into books and television, and who speaks for the story often matters more than the story itself.
The hum of tires fades, replaced by the crackle of an old patrol car radio. You are in the vast Intar Basin, where the land stretches like an old map full of secrets. Stories here do not just happen. They get told by people with badges, ranches, and microphones. Those voices turn whispers into headlines. Take Stan Milford Jr., a retired Navajo ranger. He patrolled these areas for years, dealing with everything from lost hikers to strange reports. In a Gallup Sun article from November 2024, Milford shared details from his time at the Window Rock office. He talked about voices echoing in empty rooms and coins materializing out of thin air. These were not just tall tales. They came with named witnesses and specific locales. Milford's partner, Jonathan Dover, was right there with him. Together, they investigated odd claims on tribal lands, but their accounts are personal testimony, not lab-tested proof. Local reporting framed them as dedicated officers facing the unexplained. For instance, in one archival excerpt, Milford said, "We'd hear these voices clear as day, but no one was there." That reel-to-reel interview carries weight because it is named and sourced, but it remains a story told by a man who was there. Shift to the ranchers, Terry and Gwen Sherman. They bought the property in the mid-1990s, hoping for a quiet life raising cattle. Instead, they reported strange lights, mutilated animals, and shapes in the dark. Their story reached the public through the book Hunt for the Skinwalker and through television. In a local report, Terry described a wolf-like creature that did not die from bullets. He said it just trotted off like nothing happened. Gwen added details about doors slamming on their own. Their accounts escalated the ranch's fame, turning private fears into national intrigue. A metal fence wire resonates in the wind, vibrating like a warning. The Shermans stand by it, watching the herd scatter as something unseen approaches. They were ranchers dealing with losses, seeking answers or a way out. Media amplified their words, but no independent evidence verified those bulletproof wolves. It is testimony, provenance from interviews, but not the same as physical proof. These figures did not operate in a vacuum. Rangers like Milford and Dover had institutional roles tied to Navajo law enforcement, and they respected cultural boundaries. Their stories fed into books and documentaries, lifting them into public view, but a ranger's memoir tone is not factual confirmation. It is one voice, not community consensus, and Dene authorities hold their own views. Think about our friend Jake, the truck driver, who had his own frightening encounter on a desert highway years ago. Hearing these named accounts, Jake might feel a spark of recognition, voices like Milford's echoing his own unanswered questions. Personal stories push people like Jake to search harder for truth, but testimony is not proof. These accounts shape perception while leaving room for doubt. Inside the Window Rock office, coins clink onto the desk from nowhere. Milford freezes, radio static buzzing. He documents it and shares the moment with Dover. This shows investigative pacing, slow, careful notes, but no scientific methods on display. Named sources build narrative, but we need more than that to call an event verified. For Jake, this hits home. Years after his highway scare, he pores over articles about the Shermans, wondering if their ranch lights match what ran beside his truck. The consequence keeps him up at night. Personal stories pulling him deeper while media framing reminds him the full picture may be missing. Named voices add faces to the mystery and foreground motives over abstract claims.
So we have the Rangers, Stan Milford Jr. and Jonathan Dover, and ranchers Terry and Gwen Sherman, and we have seen how reporters turned their words into lasting lore. Testimony from named sources builds the myth, but it is not the same as hard evidence. For Jake, our truck driver still searching for answers after his desert encounter. That means living with voices that feel real, yet remain unproven. Now, the focus shifts to investigation methods and standards, tools that sift truth from tale. What counts as evidence, and how do we verify it? Can science bridge the gap between story and fact? We're back on the road with the Skinwalker legends. We've just heard from rangers, ranchers, and journalists who carry these stories. People like Jake, a truck driver still piecing together a frightening night on a desert highway. Now it's time to step back and look at the tools we use to sort fact from feeling. What counts as solid evidence, and what gets in the way when culture and respect come into play?
It's late at night, you're behind the wheel, tires humming on a lonely asphalt highway through the desert. The fence line blurs past, sagebrush shadows flicking in the headlights. Then something catches your eye, a shape running parallel to the car, keeping pace almost effortlessly. Your heart races. Is it a coyote, a deer, or something else? You slow, peer into the dark, but just before you can name it, the moment freezes. That's where Jake's account stops. Years later, it still haunts him as he searches for answers. Jake's story, like so many we've heard, begins with personal testimony. It's powerful and it pulls you in. In an investigation, testimony is the start. To build evidence, you need more. Paper trails, documented handling, repeatable measurements. Chain of custody is the paper trail that shows how something moved from field to lab. If Jake had snapped a photo that night, who would have held it? How would we know it wasn't edited? Those questions matter because they build trust in what's real. In a dim forensic lab, metal shelves hold stacks of files, the air tinged with ink and dust. An analyst clicks a tape recorder, the analog whir fills the room. Tom spoke with forensic expert Dr. Elena Vasquez, a fact-checker who's looked into strange claims before. First, she told Tom, you'd want physical samples, hair, skin, tracks, that can be tested in a lab. But chain of custody is key. If it's not documented step by step, it's useless. For anomalies, she'd look for DNA that doesn't match known animals, or bones that show impossible changes. Dr. Vasquez went on, peer review is non-negotiable. That means other experts check your work, try to poke holes in it. And reproducible measurements? You have to be able to repeat the test and get the same results every time. Put those standards against the Skinwalker tales. Ranchers report mutilated cattle. Often there's a gap in the evidence chain, because no one documented who collected samples or how they were preserved. Without that, verification is difficult. Jake returned to the roadside later, but wind and time had erased any traces. He's left with memory alone, still scanning the dark on long drives for proof that never appears. At the edge of tribal land, the sun beats down on red earth and a chain-link fence marks the boundary. Investigators stand with cameras and notebooks, but then they stop. Cultural constraints get in the way. Skeptical Inquirer and native-authored skeptical syntheses emphasize that Yi Nal Lushi and related terms sit inside witchcraft and taboo frameworks, and many Dene consider discussion restricted. You can't demand access to sacred sites or rituals without causing real harm. This taboo shapes the investigation. If a story involves practices Dene people won't share with outsiders, how do you verify it? Dr. Vasquez told Tom plainly, we can't require cultural insiders to reveal sacred practices to satisfy skeptics. That crosses a line. It's not about dismissing experiences, it's about respect. Jake's search runs into these walls. He's read articles and talked to locals, but some doors stay closed. He respects those boundaries, even as the lack of answers leaves him frustrated. Take the ranger testimonies we've heard. They're compelling, but without reproducible data, like multiple sightings with consistent measurements, they remain anecdote rather than proof. Peer review would help. Have other scientists examine any photos or videos. Viral clips spread fast, but popular attention isn't validation. Chain of custody often breaks. Who filmed it? When? How? The gaps are everywhere. Jake watches those clips late at night, comparing them to his memory, but he knows they're not enough. Flip through an old newsprint layout, black and white pages rustling like whispers. Notes are reviewed, evidence checked. Standards like chain of custody and peer review are the difference between a wild claim and something verifiable. They also protect cultural dignity by keeping investigators from demanding sacred knowledge. For Jake, that means his quest continues, empathetic to the communities involved, even as he keeps searching for something solid to hold on to.
To close, evidence standards, chain of custody and peer review expose the gaps between gripping tales and hard proof, while also setting boundaries that respect culture. For Jake, haunted by that highway night, the search can feel endless, the weight of unanswered questions pressing on him during those long drives. Ahead are the believers themselves, the rangers, the viral stories, the heartfelt convictions that keep these legends alive. What happens when those convictions meet the toolbox we've just been through? Remember our friend Jake, the truck driver who had his own frightening encounter on a desert highway years ago. He's still out there searching for answers, and segments like this keep him hooked. You hear people who swear by these experiences, letting their words stand on their own. It's immersive and persuasive. We go down the rabbit hole.
It's late at night on a lonely desert highway. Tires hum on the asphalt, steady and rhythmic. A fence line blurs by in the headlights. Then, something catches your eye. Gravel footsteps crunching alongside the car, keeping pace. You glance over, heart pounding, but whatever it is stays just out of sight. We freeze right there, before naming it, because that's where the fear lives, in the unknown. Stories like this draw people in. They start with folks like park rangers, out in remote areas, facing things they can't explain. One ranger, who we'll call John for privacy, shared his account in interviews. He described patrolling near the Uinta Basin in Utah, where reports of strange sightings pile up. John said, "I was driving the perimeter trail at dusk. Distant coyote calls echoed, then an owl hooted sharp and close. Suddenly, this figure darted across the path. Too fast for a person, too big for an animal. It vanished into the brush, but I felt watched the whole night." These are his lived experiences, claims that carry weight for believers. John's story isn't alone. Other rangers talk about livestock corrals rattled in the night, fences shaking without wind. They hear fox yips, mixing with unnatural growls. One report claims a ranger found tracks that shifted from animal to human mid-stride. These sensory details, sounds, sightings, that chill in the air make the narrative stick. Believers point to them as signs of something paranormal at work. Think about how these tales spread. Viral media takes them further. Short clips on social platforms show blurry figures running beside cars, gravel kicking up in the dark. One popular video captures a driver narrating in real time, "It's matching my speed. Listen to those footsteps." The comments explode with people sharing similar scares. That creates an echo chamber of conviction, where shared experiences start to feel like evidence. High-production documentaries amp it up even more. Take the Netflix Unsolved Mysteries episode and associated publicity that popularized the Paranormal Rangers narrative, increasing public awareness of ranger investigations into Skinwalker reports. It featured rangers recounting incidents with dramatic reenactments, distant animal calls, fence lines in the moonlight, and that eerie sense of pursuit. Viewers walked away convinced because the storytelling pulls you in. Let's tie this back to real people. Our truck driver Jake, who had that frightening encounter years ago, watches these clips obsessively. He says they match what he saw, something loping beside his rig on that gravel shoulder. Coyote howls turning into something else. For Jake, these stories validate his fear, keeping him up at night and still searching for answers. It's a human cost, belief reshaping how he views his own life. Another vivid scene comes from a local witness, a farmer near the basin. He claimed, "I was checking the corral at midnight. Owl calls from the trees, then silence. Something rattled the fence, not wind, not an animal. I shone my light and saw eyes reflecting back too high off the ground." These assertions build a persuasive case layer by layer, focusing on the emotional truth of the moment. Viral proof extends to podcasts and docs, where rangers assert confidently. One said, "We've logged dozens of incidents, shapes shifting in the dark, sounds that don't match any known wildlife." It's evidentially thin, but the conviction is thick. Believers see patterns, the running figures, the animal calls, the corral disturbances. This narrative convinces because it feels lived in and shared by many. Think of Jake again. Years after his encounter, he's at a truck stop, hearing similar stories from other drivers. One shows him a viral clip on his phone, footsteps crunching gravel beside a moving car. Just like Jake's night, it hits home, reinforcing his belief. The consequence: Jake avoids that highway now, his route's longer, his peace disrupted. Belief without rigorous evidence can reshape reputations and histories, just like that. We're holding space for these convictions here, cataloging the energy of belief before any critique. From ranger testimonies to viral media, it's a web of persuasive tales, sensory details like distant fox calls, and fence rattles making it all too real. Listeners feel the pull, the immersion, as these stories unfold.
We've let these believer stories breathe, full of ranger claims and viral moments that pack an emotional punch. For Jake, the truck driver still haunted by his desert highway scare, this kind of narrative keeps the questions alive, even changing how he plans his routes to avoid old fears. Hold on! Next, we shift to the skeptic's lens, testing these claims against facts and forensics, and tracing those viral clips to where perception meets rumor. If a story feels true because it is told convincingly, does that make it true? Those ranger accounts and viral clips give you chills, don't they? Remember our friend Jake, the truck driver who had that frightening encounter on a desert highway years ago. He's still searching for answers, weighing what he saw against what can be proven.
Late at night on a lonely highway, your tires hum steadily on the asphalt, the kind of rhythm that lulls you into a trance. There's a fence line blurring by in the headlights, chain link catching the glow. Then something moves, running alongside the car, matching your speed. Your heart jumps. Is it an animal? A person? Something else? We freeze that moment right there, before naming it. That's where doubt creeps in. That's the edge we're on. We've heard the believer side. Those raw, first-hand stories from rangers who saw shapes shifting in the dark, or the viral clip of a figure lurking near Skinwalker Ranch. They build a case that's hard to shake. Methodical testing shows how viral clips often fail under scrutiny, how fear can twist what we see, and why government attention doesn't always mean validation. Skepticism without nuance risks repeating the same harms as sensationalism, so we tread carefully. First, the scene of a viral clip's birth. Inside a dimly lit room in the late 90s, an analog tape recorder clicks as someone hits record. The air smells like old newsprint, Pages spread out on a table, headlines about strange sightings. A fact-checker pores over grainy footage, the kind that exploded online. Tom sits down with Sarah Klein, a veteran fact-checker who's debunked hundreds of these. Sarah explains, most clips start as shaky phone videos or old camcorder tapes. They go viral because they tap into our love for the mysterious. When tested, many lack basics, clear timestamps, multiple angles, or usable metadata. One clip from the ranch showed a blurry shape, claimed to be otherworldly. Digital forensics revealed editing artifacts, not proof of a hoax, but a gap where conviction outruns corroboration. Jake, our truck driver friend, saw something similar on that highway. He filmed it on his dash cam, but the footage was too dark to confirm. It left him wondering, was it real or just shadows playing tricks? Now shift to a quieter scene, a cognitive psychologist's office, paper files echoing as cabinets open and close. Dr. Elena Ruiz studies how fear biases perception. Tom asks her about pattern recognition under threat. Elena describes it simply. When we're scared, our brains go into overdrive, connecting dots to survive. It's called pareidolia, seeing faces in clouds or shapes in the dark. In high-stress spots like isolated ranches, a coyote's howl or a branch snapping can become something more. Rangers' testimonies are sincere, but fear can fill in gaps. For Jake, that night on the highway, the running shadow matched his deepest fears. Years later, it affects him. He drives with the radio on loud now, to drown out the memories. It's a human cost, searching for answers in the unknown. Map it back to the believer claims. Remember the ranger who swore he saw a figure change form. Strong conviction, but no reproducible data. No lab tests, no second witness with the same view. That's a weak link, or the viral media buzz. Exciting, but often built on uncorroborated tales. One more scene. A late 20th century patrol car. Radio static crackling as an officer drives the back roads near the ranch. Government interest enters here. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, has looked into UAP reports. Their historical record states that many lack data and do not provide evidence of extraterrestrial origins. They caution against conflating government interest with validation of paranormal claims. So officials checking up reports doesn't mean they're confirming anything supernatural. It's often just routine investigation. Tom probes further with Sarah and Elena on this AARO angle. Why do people mistake interest for proof? They agree, often. It's about gathering information, not endorsing claims. For Jake, this hits home. He reached out to authorities after his encounter, hoping for confirmation. Instead, he got polite notes saying they were looking into it, but no answers. It left him isolated, questioning his own eyes. That's the implication. Without solid data, even sincere stories float in uncertainty.
Sarah has seen how these clips take off. What makes a clip spread so fast, and where do most of them collapse under scrutiny? Dr. Ruiz explains how fear amplifies details. How does that lead people to see patterns that might not be there? Based on RO's findings, how often is government attention just interest, not validation? We've pulled back carefully, seeing how fear and virality can shape perceptions without dismissing the witness's experiences. For Jake, his search continues, but with new tools to question what he saw. A real consequence that grounds him amid the mystery. After that, the legacy of these narratives, how they affect communities, and how facts can help dispel rumors. But it leaves us wondering, how do we honor stories while seeking truth? Now it's time to face the real damage these stories have caused in communities and media. We just used skeptical tools, checking viral clips, noticing how fear shapes what we see, and avoiding the mistake of treating government attention as proof. Now comes accountability. We correct rumors that need fixing with solid facts.
Late at night on an empty desert highway, your tires hum against cracked asphalt, the only sound breaking the dark. A metal fence runs beside the road, its wires humming faintly in the wind. Then something catches your eye, a shadow running parallel to your car, keeping pace just beyond the fence. Your heart races. You lean forward, squinting into the dark, and we stop that moment before we name it. Because in stories like these, what we think we see often isn't the full truth. Shift out to the sparse outskirts of a small town. Neon from an old diner flickers against the night, casting red and blue glows on the dusty road. A sheriff's cruiser idles nearby, its engine a low rumble. In the dry air, distant calls. Coyotes, maybe a fox or an owl, echo across the flats. This is where the real damage starts to show. Strange encounter stories spread far beyond these lands, but not always with respect. Think about the harms. Misappropriation happens when outsiders take sacred Dene traditions and twist them into scary tales for clicks and views. It's not just borrowing, it's taking pieces of a culture and selling them as entertainment. Then there's harassment, people showing up uninvited, demanding answers or rituals that aren't theirs to know. And tourism pressure floods quiet places with outsiders, straining resources and invading privacy. These are not abstract ideas, they hurt real people and communities. Remember Jake, the truck driver who had a frightening encounter on a desert highway years ago. He's still searching for answers, but misinformation makes that search harder. Jake has shared how viral stories twisted his experience, drawing strangers to harass him online, call him a liar, or demand ever more details. It turned his personal quest into a public spectacle and added stress to an already painful memory. That's a human consequence we can't ignore. We can correct some false ideas with verified facts. People often take government attention as proof of something paranormal. But authoritative documents show it's more about data gaps, missing information from remote areas, not endorsements of the supernatural. Government reports focus on practical concerns like land use or security, not on validating mysterious forces. F10. Viral Skinwalker clips on short-form platforms often fail fact checks. Outlets such as Snopes document meme dynamics where ominous labels propagate faster than verification. These videos spread like wildfire, labeled as proof without any real check. Fact-checkers show how a blurry clip gets a scary tag, and suddenly it's treated as evidence shared millions of times, long before anyone confirms whether it was a coyote or a hoax. That meme propagation is a pattern. Ominous stories stick because they thrill us, and they outpace careful verification. For Jake, the effect is clear. His genuine questions are drowned by fakes. Friends who saw debunked clips assume every account is false. It isolates him, and it makes finding the truth feel lonelier. Misinformation doesn't just confuse, it divides people. What can we definitively correct? Claims that every viral clip is verified proof, dispelled. Most fail basic checks. Ideas that government files confirm paranormal activity. No, those files point to gaps in data, not validations. Not everything is settled. Some sightings remain unexplained, and those questions are best left to DNA cultural custodians who hold the traditions. We do not demand disclosure. We respect boundaries. For open questions like odd lights or sounds without clear causes, those stay as genuine mysteries, not neatly debunked or proven. Back at the town outskirts, the sheriff's cruiser finally pulls away, tires crunching gravel. An owl calls from the dark, and the fence wire hums one last time. This is where we draw the line. Correct what's wrong, honor what's sacred, and leave space for what remains unknown. It calls for balance, respect, and clarity.
We've laid it out plainly. Viral clips often fail under scrutiny. Government attention signals, data gaps rather than paranormal stamps, and harms like appropriation and harassment hit hard. For Jake, the truck driver still seeking answers, that means sifting noise to find what is real. A reminder that unchecked stories can deepen personal wounds. What if the real power lies not in the shadows, but in how we choose to listen? We went deep into the Skinwalker legend, pulling apart myths and confronting the real harms they've caused. The way we end this story matters to the people whose names and lives were pulled into it. Think of our friend Jake, the truck driver who's still searching for answers after his frightening encounter on that desert highway years ago. How do we hold mystery and respect at the same time? Here's how.
Late at night, you're driving down a lonely highway in the desert. Tires hum on the asphalt. A fence line blurs past your window. Then something catches your eye. A shape running alongside the car, keeping pace in the dark. Your heart races. You lean forward, trying to make it out. But we freeze that moment right there, before naming it. Because sometimes, the unknown deserves to stay that way. We tracked the rumors, viral tales, and the real impacts on communities. Now the record gets clearer. People often claim government validation for these legends, pointing to vague reports or old files. But as we showed earlier, those claims don't hold up. No official stamp from institutions like the FBI or military confirms supernatural events. What exists are investigations into unrelated crimes or land disputes, nothing more. It's easy to twist those into something bigger, but the facts do not support it. On a canyon rim, wind whistles through the rocks, carrying distant calls of an owl or coyote. That's the real setting for many of these stories. Navajo land, rich with history and tradition. The Navajo Nation requires permits for filming on tribal land. The Navajo Nation TV and Film and Parks and Recreation departments maintain permit processes and rules for photography and filming. Without those, any footage or report lacks proper respect and context. Our production followed that playbook strictly. We consulted tribal sources, got permissions where needed, and avoided stepping into sacred spaces. That's not just ethical, it's essential. That connects to the harms we've discussed. Appropriation isn't just borrowing a story, it's ignoring the cultural custodians who protect it. For folks like Jake, the search for answers can feel personal. But when myths get twisted, it leads to harassment of real people. Imagine Jake pulling into a sparse town outskirts. Neon diner sign flickering, a sheriff's cruiser idling nearby. He stops for coffee, shares his tale quietly, only to hear how online sleuths have turned it into something invasive. That's a human consequence. His experience gets buried under noise, and communities suffer from outsiders flooding in without regard. So what claims have we dispelled? Viral footage that goes unverified does not prove anything. Institutional interest does not equal supernatural proof. Most inquiries are mundane. And the idea that these legends are open invitations to probe sacred practices is wrong. Myth-making often ignores the real stewards of these stories. Yet not everything is resolved. Some encounters, like Jake's, remain unexplained. Was it an animal, a trick of the light, or something cultural we should not pry into? Those questions linger, and that's okay. Inside a courthouse, echoes bounce off stone. Paper files rustle as someone flips through old records. This is where real evidence lives, not in sensational videos, but in documented facts. For future reporting, demand that standard. If a story claims truth, ask for permits, tribal consultations, and verified sources. To substantiate claims without harm, start with respect. Follow Navajo Nation guidelines, listen to cultural leaders, and avoid turning mysteries into spectacles. Our production drew the line there. We will not push for disclosures that could damage traditions. Back to Jake for a moment. Years after his encounter, he's still out there driving those roads, wondering. But he's learned to approach it differently now, seeking understanding without demanding secrets. That human pull of the unknown can change how we see the world, but it should not come at others' expense. Genuine lines of inquiry remain, like studying folklore's role in culture or environmental factors in sightings, but always with permission and care. As we close, Jake has found some peace. He's talking to locals respectfully, piecing together what might have happened that night. It's a reflective note on respect. Mysteries do not need solving to be meaningful. They remind us to honor the spaces and stories that are not ours to claim.
There you have it, a clear summation of what's been dispelled, like those inflated claims of government backing, and what remains unresolved, such as the core of encounters like Jake's. The real consequence for Jake is finding balance in his ongoing search without letting curiosity harm the communities involved. As we end this chapter of Unexplained History, thank you for joining us on this respectful exploration. Visit unexplained.co/newsletter to join our mailing list for updates.